Hi, welcome to MBANow. I'm Rob Van Raphorst. With us today is Michael Greenbaum of Safeguard. Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Rob. It's great to be here today.
So, Michael, let's start off with talking about what the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has been on mortgage field services.
Yeah, most of the impact has been principally on volume. So obviously what has happened with the forbearances, most of the post foreclosure work, the REO work has gone almost to zero. So we've been fortunate enough that we picked up a little bit of market share. So some of the pre-foreclosure work has remained. So actually our inspection volume has remained relatively flat pre-COVID versus post-COVID. Securing work has been down a little bit. So really what that's required us to do is have to react with our vendor base and just make sure that they're diversified across the different service offerings. So if they weren't doing inspections before, let's get you doing those. If you weren't doing pre-foreclosure work before, let's definitely get you trained up, get you credentialed in that line of work, just so you can stay active and keep your crews busy.
So how has Safeguard prepared for the potential increase in volume once the foreclosure and eviction moratoriums are lifted?
Yeah, so that's been the interesting part. None of us have a crystal ball. We don't know exactly when that is actually going to happen. Most of the talk right now is post-June that it's a likely, but for the most part, our forecasting models have it happening, if at that time, maybe even a little bit later. And certainly if the release is done at the federal level, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen at the state level. So we do definitely see a protracted draw out in this process. But what we've been focusing on is really what we did is we went back, we looked at the pre-COVID levels, and we just did some basic capacity planning. And our base assumption is that when everything returns back to normal, the wheel is turning as it should be turning normally, we think the volume is going to end up being a threefold increase. So that's what we've been working with, and we've been building out our capacity models, and that's both internal to our staff and also external to our networks. And we've been using that as a benchmark.
So how have you guys utilized big data to improve the way that you do business?
Yeah, so probably the thing that is most variable in our processes is the fact that we have over 5,000 independent contractors doing work for us, and each of those contractors potentially can approach a property in their own unique way. So one of the big things that we have been focused on is trying to make sure that that's a constant approach. And so we've done a lot of that just through mobile app development. So when we send our contractors and inspectors out to properties, we're not asking them to make up their own routines. We're asking them to follow a routine that's actually prescribed by our mobile applications. And then what that has done is that it has ended up taking a lot of noise out of the actual data itself, because we're getting a pretty consistent assessment of the property. And when we bring that back through our auditing processes, we're getting much more consistent information. And then the second piece is we just invested a lot of time and a lot of money in how we actually store the data, storing it at the property record and making sure that we're using our data warehouse so we can call out exceptions.
Yeah, that kind of leads me to my next question, and that's how has technology helped streamline processes?
Yeah, it's helped a ton. A lot of what we used to do is we'd have to look at every single question on every single work order. What we can do now, because of the way in which we're actually storing our information, is we can more focus on risk-based characteristics. So we can go back and we can truly understand what are the loss drivers within our space, or the things that is causing our customers, servicers within the industry, the most book loss or the most headaches. And because we have that information now, we can go back even after we process the work order, and we can do it more on a portfolio basis, come back, isolate that risk, take a second look at it, make sure everything is perfect, and then just do a total data validation.
I guess lastly, I would just want to know, how have you automated business processes to manage risk?
We've done a lot of automation. It has a little bit to do with my previous answer, just meaning that we're carefully storing the information itself. And now that has truly given me the ability not to look at every single transaction, but more come back, develop a risk metric, a risk scoring protocol. And then when I have assets where I've taken on risk, and maybe that's at day 0 when we first enter, or maybe it's 90 days after managing a vacant asset, I can very quickly come back, isolate the risk, queue the work, and then just take people. And so they're not necessarily doing transactional type work anymore. They're being much more analytical. They're being much more, they approach it much more like an investigator instead of just simply trying to get through the transaction. That has helped a ton.
It really goes without saying you guys are doing some tremendous stuff there at Safeguard and have a lot of great things on the horizon. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it.